Hello, I hope you had as best Christmas as possible. Welcome to the December Positive Images Festival Poetry Workshop. If you're watching me today on the 27th of December, then thank you for inviting me to be part of your festivities. Of course, this video will be up for a while, and it's not particularly, it's in fact it's not at all Christmas themed, so you can access it again at any point and it's still appropriate. Thank you to everyone who supported our workshops in this really strange year, and who has subscribed or liked the videos or watched the videos or shared the videos. It means a lot, and I am so pleased that some of you have messaged me or left comments and said they've been helpful and that you've enjoyed them. We're at 97 subscribers, so 3 more and we'll be able to go live. So if you do have a YouTube account, it would mean so much if you can subscribe to the channel. There's a button at the end, or there's the red subscribe button underneath this video. So coming up, we've got a free write activity to unblock your brain from any stresses that you may be going through. We've got our usual best practice quote from a well-known poem, and we're going to look at something with a kind of unique rhyme scheme. So stick around, stay with me. First off, a free write. Some of you may have done this before, or some of you might not have done. They're quite common in workshops. I've been doing some weekly workshops myself that I've been attending, and many of them start off with a free write. So I thought I would also include this in one of mine. If you're anything like me, there is a lot of stuff that goes on up here and gets stored and thought about and worried over, and just stays there. And sometimes this can get in the way of, it can get in the way of anything, but it can get in the way of being able to write. So even if something's bothering you, or if it's not bothering you, and if you know what it is, if you don't know what it is, a free write is a great way of getting it out of there and onto paper, where it is so much easier to deal with, and it leaves, and it's such a mindful process. I know we use that word, ban that word around a lot, but I really find this an effective way. So here's the rules. Have yourself a pen and paper. You need to keep going for the full 5 minutes. That's really important. The rule is you cannot stop writing. We are not writing a poem here. This is not going to be anything you ever show anyone. It's never going to be turned into a poem. The purpose of this type of writing is not to create something, but to release. So even if you just continuously write, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, it's still something. So it's sort of a stream of consciousness, really. It's just, an offloading onto paper. The starting sentence that you're going to use is today I am. So it good to be today I am wearing, today I am feeling, today I am doing. It can be anything. Today I am, and then just go from there and just see where it takes you. Sometimes it's quite surprising what ends up coming out of here onto the paper, and I have always felt better after doing this activity. So I felt it was a really good one to share with you. I'm going to keep the video rolling with like happy messages telling you keep going, keep writing during this time, and then we'll be back in 5 minutes with the second activity. You've got this. Okay, off you go in 3, 2, 1, start writing. great work. Let me know how you got on with that. You can put it into the comments, put it in the Facebook group, you know, email me. Let me know how you found that activity and whether you found it useful. You know, if you're a regular, that I like to find poems from across the world, across the times, and from all different people. So here we've got a poem by, I'm just looking where he was from again, Norwegian poet. I knew it was Scandinavian, just making sure I got the right country there. Norwegian poet, Olav H. Haig. I've managed this session to actually just find completely male poets, and I usually get a mix, but these were the poems I wanted to use for this session. If you like, I do poems by female poets as well, please look back at the other sessions. But this one, we've got Olav H. Haig to start us off. It's translated, he wrote in Norwegian. This poem is translated by Robert Bly. Let me just tell you a little bit about those, because I know that many of you enjoyed my little bios that I find out, mostly off Poetry Society or Wikipedia. So, Olav H. Haig, 1908 to 1994, lived all his life in Ulvik, a village in the west of Norway. He translated many English and American writers into Norwegian and spent many years training in horticulture and fruit cultivation. He lived his whole life in Ulvik, working as a gardener in his own apple orchard. So that's the original poet. This was translated by an American poet, Robert Bly, who was born December 23rd, so he just had his birthday a couple of days ago, in 1926. He's an American poet, essayist, activist, and leader of the I know I was going to, every time I practice these words, but poetic men's movement. I've not heard of that, and I looked it up. Really interesting. Bly's willingness to collaborate with others is especially evident in his extensive translation work. So he has also translated a lot of poems, including, of course, this one. This is called Barley Field. An old woodcut of the London Bridge and a coloured lithograph of a barley field. There are no other pictures on Ward D. The London Bridge lifts sooty towers above the river, but it's the barley field I see, a golden ocean of barley. It's not like other grain fields. Maybe it's those inward-looking eyes gone into it so it becomes heaven. A fall-coloured sky, mild, with no harvesters and no scythes. As I always say, feel free to Google the title of the poem. The text will be available on the internet. I always pick ones that are available for you. So it's Barley Field by Olav H. Haig, or you can rewind the video there and just re-listen if you want to. The things that I wanted us to consider in this poem is how simple language can be very effective. The phrases and images in this poem work together. So we had that wonderful, we've got the description of the two pictures, one line, first picture, next line, second picture, and then that stanza finishes on a third line that just says, there are no other pictures on Ward D. And that was sort of like, oh, okay, Ward D, so maybe we're in a hospital here. And it wasn't sort of what I was expecting when he was describing two pieces of art. It wasn't the setting that I thought it would be. And then, of course, that word only, there's only two pictures on this wall. And, of course, it finishes with describing the barley field, which he says is his favourite of the two pictures. I'm not very good at art. I think a lithograph is a picture. I know what it is, it's on slate. But just, if I'm using the wrong terminology here, I'm a poet, not an artist, so we go with pictures. It says there's no harvesters and no scythes. So the field has been left, it's in its glory, nobody is chopping it down or taking its beauty away from it or killing it, essentially, the scythe, because that's quite a strong word. Now, they're two completely unrelated things. We've got the fact that the setting is the hospital, and then we've got this picture of the barley field that's just beautiful and has got no harvesters and no scythe. So, as I say, essentially they're unrelated. However, they are definitely not unrelated because they are in the same poem, and you wouldn't put them there if it was an accident. So already in our minds as a reader, we've made a link between this field and the setting of the hospital. And your interpretation of what that may mean is however you want it to be, because it does not explicitly say, and that's the beauty of poems, exactly what the link is. For me, I wonder whether, he's on ward D, he could be a visitor, but I'm thinking if he knows that these are the only two pictures, maybe that the narrator is at the hospital, and that the barley reminds them of home, or maybe of themselves, and the fact that it was beautiful and undisturbed and peaceful, and maybe that's where they're craving to be rather than at the hospital, which is somewhere which is a clinical indoor setting and with machinery. And I think maybe that, in my mind, could be a link between those two phrases. So this could be arguably an example of ekphrastic poetry. So that just very, very basically means poems that are inspired by art. These pictures that the poet describes or the narrator describes could be real, or they could be completely imagined, I don't know. But they were inspired, the poem could be inspired by the art, therefore it's an ekphrastic poem. Maybe you're in Ward D, or maybe you're somewhere else, but wherever you are, and this is your activity, what are the two pieces of art that are on the wall? Describe them and consider why they're important to you or the narrator in your poem. So you can keep the setting of Ward D and just have different poems, or you can have a setting wherever you like. It's your poem and you can interpret, like with poems, you can interpret the activities in any way that you like. And have fun, and I will see you in the next activity. Okay, I hope you had fun creating your pieces of art, or using two pieces of art as the examples that you like. Do let me know what pictures you thought about. You can put it in the comments, again you can put it in the Facebook page, or you can send it by email, but I'd be really interested to know what artwork you had on your walls for that last activity. Next up, we've got a best practice quote. This one is unknown. I don't know who said it. It's in a lot of places, it's quite well quoted, but I don't know, neither does anybody else, which is why I don't know who originally it was attributed to. If you're a poet, a misfit, a dreamer, a schemer, a rebel, a lover, a doer, a thinker, please, for the love of the universe, don't change. And I just thought that was really lovely, and you don't need me to explain it or expand on it. It is what it is. Don't change. Activity 3, the final one of today's session. This is an extract from Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. It's probably his most celebrated poem. I've got his bio, so don't worry. As soon as I can get to the page, I will tell you a bit more about him. They are printed very nicely and closely together. There we go, okay. He was an English writer. He'd be very, very old now, I think, if he was still around. English writer, cultural critic and educator of the Victorian era. He worked for 35 years as an inspector of schools. He had quite a well-known family. I think it was his dad that was the head teacher of rugby school. So again, another interesting one that you can look up in more detail should you wish to. And of course, he was a very well-known poet. This is part of the longer poem. It's not a huge poem, but I just thought this was what would be fine for our session. So again, feel free to look up the rest of the poem on Google. Dover Beach. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand, glimmering and vast, out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray, where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen, You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return upon the high strand. Begin and cease and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. It's another one that's packed with images of him looking out of his window and inviting somebody to join him to look at the sea and to listen to the sea as well, and the noise that it makes with the stones. What I personally found interesting about this is one of my favourite noises is the sea and the sound of it moving the pebbles, and it's something to me that just makes me feel safe and comforted and happy, because I'm probably in one of my favourite settings if I'm by the sea. But in this poem, Arnold doesn't portray it as being any of those things. It's something to him that's sad, very sad, creates a deep sadness and worry. A number of people believe that this poem is him or the narrator questioning their faith, and how he panicked or worried that Christianity would be lost because of the sciences, and that it could never keep up with them and it would be just taken over by them like the waves. There's also that idea that it's just he's feeling overwhelmed, and that sometimes you can look out at it and all that sort of eternity is overwhelming. So there's that going on as well. Again, it's one of those guinea pigs that you can interpret in any way that you choose, but there are some common interpretations that you could look into further should you wish. The reason I wanted us to look at this one today is because I'd like us to consider the rhyme scheme. When I first read this poem, I didn't realise that there was even a rhyme scheme particularly. It's only when I look closer into it, it rhymes. And I don't think it is obvious at first that it's a rhyming poem, unless it was just me, but I don't think it was. It's actually A, B, C, B, C rhyme scheme. So when I say that, that's just the last sound of the lines. If they're the same, then I give them, I haven't invented this. This is a poetry thing. They have the same letter. So if we go back, of course I've just put it at the bottom of the pile. We'll look at the last stanza because it's here. Sophocles long ago, and then we've got brought on the second line, but the third line, into his mind the turbid ebb and flow. So we've got a go and flow, so that's an A there. In between them, we've got a different sound, so we call that B. So we've got A, B, A at the moment. Heard it on the Aegean and it brought. And then we have to go all the way down to the fifth line before we find thought that rhymes with brought. I'm going to put this up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So we've got a go, flow, brought, thought, we and C. So A, B, A, C, B, C. It's an unusual rhyme scheme and it's not predictable. And I think that also fits in with the themes, the potential themes and the tone of the poem. But I really liked this as a rhyme scheme because it's interesting, and sometimes it is nice and it's very purposeful to have a sort of predictable rhyme scheme or a predictable rhythm to the poem because it suits the tone, and sometimes it isn't. And I think this is one of those examples where it's really interesting. I would love you to have some fun at creating your own rhyme scheme. If you want to use Matthew Arnold's rhyme scheme of A, B, C, B, C, then please feel free to. But this is a great exercise to prove that rhyme doesn't always have to be A, B, A, B or A, A, B, B rhyming couplets. So decide on your rhyme scheme before you start your poem. Decide how many lines you want in each stanza and decide what those lines are going to end in. I wouldn't unless you want to really challenge yourself, don't have too many, don't have 10 that have all got to have the same sound at the end because that would be really hard. So maybe stick to A, B, C, D if you want as well. It's up to you. It's your challenge, it's your work. But have a go and enjoy writing a rhyming poem for any theme that you would like to. I will leave you to do that in just a second, but first I just want to say once again thank you so much to you for inviting me into your home via your phone, iPad, laptop, however you do it, and taking part in these workshops. I hope they've been useful, I hope they've been enjoyable, and I wish you all the best for 2021. I will see you for the next session on Sunday, the 31st of January 2021, which sounds ridiculously far away at the moment, but it probably isn't. Have a great month, have a great new year, and I'll see you soon.